Our greatest enemy can't be defeated by weapons of this world. Britney Spears is unstoppable.
It's Britney, bitch.
Before or after she shaved her head?
Doesn't matter. Do you believe in aliens?
I want to believe.
I want to believe. Today we're going to be talking about the Laugo Alien. This is a $5,000 to $6,000, maybe more dollar pistol, and it is pretty wild. There's a lot of proprietary parts to this. It is a completely new design, and it is a gas-operated pistol. Certainly not the first gas-operated weapon, but still a very interesting design. Brings that bore axis all the way down. Tons to talk about in this gun, so let's delve into the Laugo Alien from a shooter's perspective, from a combat perspective, and talk about what makes this gun maybe something you'd want or maybe something you wouldn't want. Let's talk about it today on Grantha. Now, this content is free, so of course we have to thank the sponsors of the channel. The biggest sponsor of the channel is Primary Arms. Where are Primary Arms optics made? Sawyer.
Right
In the misty mountains of Idaho by the dwarves who live here.
Yeah.
i.e. short white people. So give Primary Arms a lot of love. If you don't know, the Primary Arms Compact 1-Day is incredible. We love it. One of my favorite optics. Give them a lot of love. It's October, which means spooky skeleton season. So email them, say, hey, spooky skeleton, and see what they say back. Their PR team actually hates me.
It's true.
And if you want to be a more American, we of course have Henry Repeating Arms, made in America or not made at all. This is a 300 black lever action. That's pretty neato right there. So a lot to talk about with them, but basically here it is, guys. Shot a lot of weapons in my time, but the more I shoot, the more I just like some good old-fashioned American firearms. So give them a lot of love. Tell them you love them. Tell them more specifically that you feel like a real bona fide cowboy when you hold their weapons. See what happens. Guys, of course, if you want to be a better shooter, Mantis will turn your weapon into a dry fire machine. Go and check them out. They are amazing. Here's Connor, which is Sawyer's brother, shooting one. He's a little retarded, but he was in the Army, so that all checks out. Of course, guys, All Ammunition is sponsored for by AAC, primarily firing 124 grain NATO rounds. We love them. So with all that being said, let's talk about a $6,000 pistol. So this weapon's pretty radically different, so let's talk about it for just a moment. When it comes to recoil on a firearm, your general Browning action weapons, your short recoil operated weapons, they're simply taking the recoil from the round detonating. They're using a spring and slide weight in order to control the recoil. Now, they work really well and they're extremely reliable. We have a Browning high power right here. As you can see, they're really not that hard to control. But that being said, there of course have been a lot of advancements in technology and materials. When we think of gas-operated pistol, I think of, the P7, incredible little gun right there. But, these weapons usually don't end up being that popular for a variety of reasons. That brings us to the Laugo Alien. What the Laugo Alien does is by using a very unique gas system, by using a very unique operating system, we have a weapon where the barrel is actually in line with your hand right here. So this means that the recoil is going straight back into your hand. So it's a little bit of an odd recoil impulse compared to your typical Browning actions. But the reason for that is when I'm firing the Browning action, the whole slide is taking a lot of that recoil force is kind of converted into that kind of overhand movement, so they feel pretty gentle. the Alien feels very gentle as well, due to the gas system, but that recoil is kind of direct back in your hands. It's a little weird the first time you kind of shoot it a few times, but you get used to it pretty quickly. But I know what you're all thinking. That's, what does it look like on the inside, and how does the recoil comparison look? So let's do a recoil comparison versus a common weapon, and then two kind of sporty, more competition-style pistols like the Alien right here. Let's see what they look like. Obviously, we have the Surefire XVL2 on here, so we need to pull that little guy off for a good recoil comparison. Stop right there. We're going to shoot it at both 24 frames, and then we're going to do it at 120 frames. We'll take a few shots here on all these guns. We are running G9. This is defensive ammunition that is very fast, so I wanted to show you with a defensive round what it's going to look like. So first up, we're going to have the Laugo Alien. So very gentle recoil, very easy to control. To be clear, I have some pretty severe nerve damage on my neck on my left side from when I broke my neck. So pistols have always been a little bit of a challenge for me, but nonetheless, the Alien feels very nice. Okay, let's do a true classic right here. We have the Browning High Power, my favorite pistol, and just a real workhorse. Recoil feels gentler simply because more of that energy is being transferred into the slide, but the gun jumps more compared to the Alien. Next up, let's try the Archon firearms. This one's pretty cool. This is a Type B right here, and we'll see how she runs. This one feels really good. This is a pretty low bore axis firearm. I would say it and the High Power feel pretty similar. And then finally, we'll do the good old Staccato XC right here. This guy's kind of a little beast. That's pretty ridiculous. However, this thing has a brake on it, but man, you can see pretty ridiculous. All right, let's try the Alien one more time. Interesting, very interesting. Okay, there's a lot to talk about that right there, but let's do an instant replay. Let's take a look at all of them side by side. Okay, so we've shot all of them. You guys have looked at it. Let me tell you what it felt like from a shooter's perspective. The lightest recoiling boy is the XC. The XC is a little beast. There's a lot of good things to say about it. Now, the one problem you do run into with the XC is a brake is going to rob a lot of the energy of the slide in cycling. So sometimes at certain rounds you'll have trouble with them running. Also, in addition to that, because the gun is sprung a little bit lighter, it means it has a lighter recoil spring, you can run into issues as it gets dirty, it's going to shut down a little bit faster. And that's kind of true a lot of these kind of more race guns where they're sprung kind of on the edge. So with both the XC, not the normal staccatos, but the XC specifically, you run into that issue. And you also kind of run into that issue with the Alien for some different reasons. But we'll talk about that in just a moment. There's a lot to talk about the Alien. Now, with the High Power is a classic design, guys. Between this and the Archon, I kind of actually like the recoil of the High Power a little bit. That being said, I'm a little bit of a slut for the High Power, so maybe it's not fair to say that. But both these guns felt fairly similar in many ways. Here's the thing. Without having a brake on there, you're always going to have that recoil going back in your hand. It's just going to go back into your hand differently depending on the type of gun that you have. Now, the one thing that we can say about the Alien is that due to the fact that it's running a gas system in there, you can actually have a lighter slide, lighter springs, etc., because you're able to precisely control the amount of force that's coming back to cycle the weapon versus your typical, short action firearm like Glock or Browning High Power type design. So what does that look like? I think that's the question we all have. So let's go ahead. Let's take a look at the inside of the Laugo Alien. Let's see what we're dealing with. So here's probably the coolest thing about the Alien is due to its design, there's a lot of features that are really great from a shooter's perspective. So although the recoil, you can't always get rid of recoil because it's down in your hand, it feels really good. In addition to that, the sights aren't recoiling. So the only recoiling mechanism on this is going to be this slide right here. And then you can see the internal piston and recoil springs in there, and we'll take that all down in a second. So because the sights aren't cycling, it's very easy to keep them on target. And in addition to that, because that bore axis is so low in your hand, you find that when you shoot it, the return, as the slide comes back into battery, it brings you right back onto target very quickly. So it's not that the gun's going to make you a better shooter, but if you're already a good shooter, it's going to help you push a little bit harder because it's it's not as hard to shoot this gun fast and accurate. I think that's probably the best way to put it. You know, no gun's gonna make you an excellent shooter. I'm no, you know, Jerry Michalik, Lena Michalik, Ben Stoger, et cetera, et cetera. That being said, when I do get a better gun like this, I can definitely feel it just due to how well it's working for me. So let's go ahead and take this guy down. So the first thing that we got right here is we need to take our sights off / our optic slide. So the nice thing about having an optic on this is that the optic doesn't recoil. So the amount of force going on to the optic is very low because of that. Optics will last a very long time. So we're gonna push out this little cross pin right here. See that? Once I've done that, I'm just gonna push on the slide. This whole thing's gonna pop off. And you can see the hammer is right here. So that hammer is actually swinging down into there in order to actuate it and strike that primer, the firing pin to actuate the primer. Another very cool note about this gun is it has a fixed barrel. That means the barrel doesn't move at all. So because of this, it has very, very good accuracy. So let's go ahead and let's take the slide off. I'm just gonna pull that back. Get that guy off right there. Okay, so we got the slide off right there. That's a slide in your Alien. Very bizarre looking, right? Very unlike things that we see. You can see there's a breech face. There's your firing pin right there. And then finally, we have our recoil spring and we have our piston assembly right here. So here's your piston assembly right here. That's where the gas is being tapped off, and then that's striking back inside this assembly right here. So the kind of issues you run into is this does need to be scraped out, as well as this assembly does need to be cleaned as well, and the carbon needs to be scraped off. So it's a very maintenance intensive gun. So we found that after about 300 to 500 rounds, it'll begin to slow down. It's also very ammunition dependent. So high quality ammunition is going to work really well, but if you're using any type of powder coated bullets or just straight lead bullets with no plating, it's going to begin to kind of gum down pretty fast. Now your typical FMJs, hollow points, those are all fine. Just as a quick note, maintenance is going to be important. You can obviously remove the recoil spring to clean it off as necessary. We just cleaned this guy, but then we fired another, 600 rounds on it. So now it's dirty as hell. So that's the gun taken down right there. You can see we have our feed ramp built in right there. We have a little buffer at the back right here. And when you press that in, you can kind of test to make sure it's still working. And then we have our barrel, which is fixed. And that is your Laugo Alien. Very kind of bizarre little mechanism here. So let's go ahead and put that guy back together. So the first thing we'll talk about right here is you can see all the carbon buildup here. This is a dirty gun, guys. So because of that, it does begin to bog down faster. But this actually is where this is rubbing right here. So you really do need to make sure that this is fairly clean on top of the barrel. So that's one of the first places that you really want to make sure is nice and clean. So that's something that I definitely hit pretty often. We did about 4,000 rounds on this guy at this point, 2,000 of them pretty close to each other. And after about a K of not very intensive cleaning, there was a ton of carbon baked onto here. So like the guys at Alien will tell you, this is 100% a gun that needs to be maintained often to keep it running in tip-top shape. This is not something that I'd specifically call a combat weapon because of that, just as a quick note. All right. Let's go ahead and put that guy back together. Hug on the top of the barrel right there. It's always a little bit bizarre. Okay, we got that guy right there. And then for this guy, simply gonna push him back into place. Now, kind of that last little bit, it's gonna stick out. You just gotta give it a nice little hit. It'll pop back in. And we have our Alien right there. So, pretty easy to take it apart. That is how that guy is working and why it's able to have such a different recoil impulse due to the very unique geometry of the weapon. We also have to give a big shout out to Havoc Holsters. They did make a custom little holster for this guy with the Surefire XCL2. They're right here in Nampa, Idaho, so of course we love them so much. Let's go ahead and let's get some shooting going, guys. What I want to show you first is going to be return. Let's talk about how well that gun returns to target. So we'll do a little bit of slow fire, not really concentrating, just working on grip right here. So if you don't know, a good guy to watch in this, Ben Stoger, Mil-Spec Mojo, all these guys talk about return and talk about that natural return. So if we're really good, we can actually close our eyes and just keep shooting. But we'll go ahead and look at that return to start. So not really trying that hard. It's very easy to get this gun to return to precisely where I want. So the point is every time I'm firing that gun, I'm watching that front sight just settle right back into where I'm aiming, which is nice. We'll do a little bit of closed eyes here. We'll see how we do. Nice, closed eyes. Got a little bit of a larger spread, but as you can see, the gun just tended to return right back to where we wanted. That's precisely what we want. Now, in addition to this, the trigger is very, very light. So we'll do a little bit of a Mozambique here. Not a little bit of a Mozambique, we'll do a straight up Mozambique. We'll show you how fast that is on this guy. Mozambiques, 2 to the chest, 1 to the head. Going pretty fast. Just trying to let the recoil drive the gun up, but probably not possible on this guy because it doesn't really recoil traditionally. On the shot, first shot is at 1.44, a little slow in the draw, but 3 shots in 1.83, nice. So you see we got our 2 to the chest, 1 to the head. Beautiful, simple, this gun runs very fast. Let's continue to run some fast drills here. Let's go and let's try good old bill drill. I think so again, I'm not a grandmaster, guys. I shoot pistol, I try to shoot well, but that injury really keeps me from getting really good, I feel like. I'm working on it with guys, but nonetheless, you know, a good bill drill time with a pistol is going to be sub 2, well, really good, like grandmaster level, is sub 2. You'll see guys doing it much faster. I average about 2.03 to 2.16 with this gun. I can get sub-second on certain guns, I mean sub-2 second on certain pistols, but it is a little bit tough. All right, we'll run this a few times and see how good we can get it, Sawyer.
All right, dude. I believe in you.
I believe in myself, man. We'll see if the audience believes in me. All right. 54. Got 1 just outside. Let's give it another shot. About 0.16. Not bad. Not bad for me. 1 out. See. Let's give that a shot again. Do you believe?
I believe.
I want to believe. Okay, that was garbage. We'll call it. You know what? We'll say that 210 is good for Mike Jones with his gimp hand. You know, I'm a little bit physically retarded, but probably a lot of you are as well. So I think this is a pretty good showcase. Don't you agree, Sawyer?
Yeah. I would say the audience is retarded, sure.
The next question is going to be, what about accuracy? This gun is ridiculously accurate due to the fixed barrel. So let's do a little bit of shooting. Iron sights isn't my forte, but I made a conscious decision to work iron sights on this guy because I wanted to. All right, we're about 60 right here. Go ahead and get some shooting done. All right, let's go ahead and step it back. The gun is super easy to shoot far because that recoil is so well managed and right back into your hand. Feels great. If only it didn't get so dirty. All right, here we are, 120, 130-ish. That feels good.
Why are you better at 120 than 60?
You know, autism, man. Should we try those back 3 targets, see if I can get all 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
See it. There
we go. Oh, no. Oh, I thought that was it. So, we've done a lot of shooting. Now let's do some autistic talking as we break this gun down from shooter's perspective. Is this something you want to own for home defense for the end of the world? Is this for people who are not good with money? Who is it good for? Let's talk about it. Let's go autistic. Rhythm with Tism. So we've done a lot of shooting. Let's do a lot of talking as we talk about the Alien full autism style, which is my forte. So this is a gas delayed blowback weapon. And what makes it even more interesting perhaps than the gas delayed blowback system is the fact that the barrel sits so deep into the pistol to the point where it's actually about 1.2 millimeters below the top of your hand, which means all of that recoil is delivered right back into your hand, and it's a very interesting firearm. In a day and age where most pistols are fairly conventional in design, primarily operating off of some variation of a Browning breech-locked design or something like that, the Alien kind of comes at you with something far different. And in addition to just being different mechanically, the manual of arms is different, the recoil impulse is different, everything about the Alien is a good deal different from most pistols that you see. The best way I could describe the Alien would be if you had an alternate variation of Earth and those humans never had John Browning. They ended up or something like that. But there's a lot of interesting things about it, so let's go ahead and let's delve into it. Now, first off, the Alien is a heavy gun. Comes in about 2.3 pounds with a loaded magazine more, so this is definitely weighing more than your typical Glock, than your typical M&P, than a lot of your typical handguns that you're seeing. In addition to this, the Alien is primarily coming at us from a competition standpoint. But you've seen the Alien in several combat roles, from Zelensky's bodyguards to other special operations units, not American, that have used them at certain times. So I guess the question that we all have is the Alien a good combat weapon? My answer would be no to that, and we'll explain more, but it is certainly a good handgun, and especially a very good competition handgun. Now, despite all that, we both know that the CZ Shadow 2s are excellent competition handguns, and they're fairly hard to beat, or even Staccatos if you want low recoil. So how does the Alien stack up compared to these more conventional designs? Let's go ahead and let's delve into it. So the first thing we're going to talk about is, of course, going to be the accuracy. Now, compared to most of your pistols that you see today, the Alien does use a fixed barrel. Now, fixed barrel isn't exactly a new concept. Weapons like the Walther, PPK, and others use a fixed barrel design. So it's not that it's a brand new design, but you don't see it nearly as much with modern pistols for a variety of reasons. But the one thing that it does lend to a handgun is going to be extremely good shot-to-shot accuracy, because there's no shift in the barrel, and so long as the sights settle back into place, then there's never really an issue. And in fact, they can be significantly more accurate compared to most of your pistols that you see today. Now, this isn't to say that your pistols nowadays are inaccurate in any sense of the term, merely that the potential accuracy and mechanical accuracy from the Alien is quite good. And indeed, from the videos that you've seen, we've been able to shoot this thing out to about 120, 150 yards, no problem. The only real mitigating factor is going to be your own accuracy, your own trigger pull, your own hold of the pistol. Everything I've seen about the barrel has been very excellent. And with the barrel, we do have a stainless steel metal, and it functions very well. Now, if you're able to take a look down the barrel, it does have your traditional rifling. This is in contrast to other weapons which use polygonal rifling, such as the Glock and others. So typically with like the Glock that uses a polygonally rifled barrel, you see a lot of issues with lead bullets, the straight lead bullets. Now, I can't remember the last time I bought 9mm ammo that was just lead nosed and not plated in some way. But suffice to say, those have caused issues. More interestingly, with this particular gun, they typically recommend FMJ. In fact, it was designed for your typical 115, 124 grain rounds, as well as 124 grain NATO. It will also run jacketed hollow points, etc. But the problem comes into play when you either have a straight lead bullet or you have some type of polymer coated bullet. Now, different companies use those polymer coated bullets. I know a lot of competition shooters reload those. So it's something you should be aware of. And the reason why those can cause some issues is that polymer coating and or the straight lead can get into the gas system and begin to really slow the weapon down and cause a lot of malfunctions. This gun is very much so the Ferrari of the gun world. And what we mean by that is, if you put E87 in your Ferrari, what's going to happen to it, Sawyer?
It's going to run like shit.
Exactly. And the same thing goes with an Alien. Not to say that you have to only run premium defensive ammo in the Alien, but rather to say that you should be running factory plated FMJs or hollow points, and the gun will run great. It's just some of those odd rounds will cause the gas system to clog due to the fact that this is not a, your typical blowback design. It does have a gas system. Now, there's a lot to be said about the gas system, so I kind of want to take a moment to explain it at this point. So we've already taken the gun down, so we're not going to really delve into that again, but I'll pop off the sight rail right there. And we have the gas system right here. So you can see the gas is tapped off right here. So how does it work? So what happens is when the weapon is fired, you have the gas tapped off. What's happening is that gas is pushing up against this piston. Stay with me for a moment. It's a gas delayed blowback. So what happens is that gas is going to push on this piston right here. This actually keeps this slide locked forward. Now, once the bullet has left the barrel, that gas pressure will drop. And at that point, the weapon will then cycle from the pressure of the bullet exiting the barrel, and then your slide will cycle, boom, feed another round, come forward. Then when you fire again, that gas pressure is gonna pressurize that piston, keeping that slide locked. Once that bullet leaves, again, the weapon will then slide and function and cycle again. So it is a very kind of odd functioning compared to what you typically think of with a piston or gas operated weapon. It's actually keeping the slide locked, not due to spring pressure, but rather due to gas pressure. So it's a very interesting design. Now, the issue that you run into with the Alien is that being a gas operated weapon, it does several things. Because you're relying on gas to keep the weapon locked, you're able to have a lighter slide, have lighter springs, so you can essentially really kill a lot of the recoil, not to mention from the barrel being so low to the gun, but also from the weight of the slide, and a majority of the weight of that slide actually being lower than the bore axis and being in line with your hands. So there's a lot of benefit to doing that particular design. The problem comes into play that it's dirty. That gas is getting all over, and more especially the chamber where that piston sits, as well as the piston itself. These piston rings become gunked up with carbon very quickly. So it's very important that you keep those clean. There's a carbon scraping tool for the internal chamber where the gas is pressurizing up against a piston. That needs to be scraped out, as well as this piston becomes coated with carbon, lead, etc. It also needs to be scraped. More famously, the designers over at Laugo, when I was talking to them about this, stated, hey, we don't recommend breathing in the magic dust. You might think it will give you powers. Those powers will be severely crippling retardation. So please be careful when you're scraping this. Make sure that you have some type of covering on your mask. We've previously talked about Avon protection with their little gas masks and stuff, especially the little masks that can protect you against lead. That's something that I wear when I'm cleaning this or the MP5 SD. Kind of on the same level when it comes to lead exposure. So make sure that those are clean, and of course the actual recoil spring, make sure that that is clean as well. What we've typically seen is it depends on your ammo types. Depending on how clean your powder is burning, and believe me, there is a difference in powders and bullet types, you could get some very dirty ammo that this gun will begin to shut down in 250 rounds. Now, using AAC, spear, those types of ammunitions, which aren't expensive, but also aren't bottom of the barrel cheap, we found that the gun typically runs between 500 to 1,000 rounds, depending on firing schedule, conditions, how well we cleaned it from before. So understand that this is a labor-intensive gun when it comes to maintenance. Now, so long as you keep it maintained, this thing will run ridiculously fun, flat, accurate, etc., etc. But again, this is why we call it the Ferrari of the gun world, because unless you're maintaining it, you're not going to get that incredible performance that you should be getting from the Alien pistol. So please be aware that maintenance cycles are very intense. The gun becomes ridiculously dirty as you begin to shoot it. So we are just a little bit north of 5K now. We ran some very cheap ammo at first. We had some issues with the fouling that we're getting from it. So we ended up going to kind of those more, not fancy, but midline rounds. So the rounds that it likes a lot is S&B. It loved that ammunition type. It loved AAC. It loved any defensive loads or anything like that, as a quick note. So that is kind of where we're at when it comes to the Alien. Now, moving up from the barrel, let's talk about the sights. There's a lot of very interesting things when it comes to the optic rail right here, what I call the optic rail, because when this gun fires, the only thing that's cycling, as you've seen ad nauseum at this point, is just a slide right here. The sights don't move. This makes it very easy to track the sights, especially because the recoil impulse is already directly back in your hand with very little muzzle flip. It's very easy to track that front sight if you're running irons, or if you're running a red dot of some type, it's also very easy to run. So if you want a red dot on your gun, you can easily just swap out your slide type right here. So we'll push up on that, pop that off, go ahead and push the pin out right here. Then go ahead and pop that into place. Boom. Now we have our optic ready Alien. So it's very easy to swap those out. And there are 3 internal points of contact in addition to the pin right here that keep it in place. So your return to zero is very good. And we do have to say that the iron sights that come with the weapon are extremely well made. I've been very happy with them. They're fully adjustable. And then the front sight being a fiber optic, perfect for competition shooting or just shooting in general. When it comes to this optic equipped top slide that we have right here, I'm not as big of a fan of it. That's not because I hate red dots. In fact, I love red dots, but the dot sits kind of conspicuously high on the gun. So I'm not a big fan of what it came with. That's kind of been my biggest complaint to them. I just don't like the dot quality, a lot of things about it. It should be noted that there's a lot of companies that do their own milling of these slides to make those dots sit very low. Like Mark III Firearms makes a really good kind of machining profile that they can do for this to get the acro to sit significantly lower on this guy. So this is something where I'd kind of recommend going with an outside manufacturer to get that. I know they probably won't be super jazzed to hear me say that, but we're beholden to nobody. So we can say whatever we want for the most part. Almost everything, right, Sawyer?
Yeah, you too.
Nothing that's going to prevent us from reviewing the gun, just mostly we can't say. Now the slide is obviously very stylized, but there's a couple things I really want to talk about here. We have the front and rear, and we have serrations right here. They're very deep, they're very stylized, but they're very, very functional. So when it comes to racking the slide on the Alien, this is something you should actually be doing quite often. We'll talk about that in a moment with manual of arms, but it's very necessary that this has good slide serration. So gripping at the front or at the rear, both work really well. So as far as like if you're doing the slingshot reload, it's very easy to grip onto that at whatever location and get that despite how wet it might get, rain, blood, whatever you might be getting on this gun. It's going to be easy to get it to actuate and to get back in the chamber to load your rounds. Now, that kind of brings us to what I thought was actually a problem, but ended up being my own problem. So let's talk about that. When it comes to a very expensive new technology like we have with the Alien right here, there's going to be a difference in manual of arms from what you're typically used to. So let's talk about that. This is one of those guns where the slide stop is truly a slide stop. They actually don't recommend using the slide stop to reload. Now, for me, that's just the way I've always been trained. I'm so used to Glocks, 1911s, where I've always run the slide stop, and I have heard the argument that the slide stop is a slide stop and it should not be used, and you should always slingshot your guns. I've never really seen any significant wear from Glocks that have 100K plus rounds on them, etc., etc. But when it comes to the Alien, when you're both holding it or if you're actuating it, you can cause some undue wear on it. So let's talk about that. So first off, when you are at slide lock, and if you use that slide lock to, as you can see, mine's pretty worn out at this point, to do that, you'll begin to wear on the actual slide catch. It will begin to peen the material and curl it over. Now, other Alien odors have had this same exact issue pop up, and this isn't an issue with the gun. This is how it was designed, which was not to use that slide stop. So when you're at slide lock and you go to, put your next mag in, put that mag in, you're actually meant to pull back and slingshot the slide into place. This is something I wasn't aware of for the first 4K rounds, and guess what? I wore out my slide stop. Luckily, it's not too hard to replace, and they sent a free one despite me kind of not understanding the manual of arms, but understand that that should be something you should think about. Now, another issue is going to be with your grip. Sometimes with your grip, you can end up applying pressure to the slide stop right here, which will of course influence the slide catch, and it can begin to wear prematurely as well. So definitely watch your grip. And in addition to that, if you have gloves, and I shot this gun gloved a lot because it does get very hot, talk about that in a moment, that can apply pressure to this as well in whatever direction, begin to wear it out. So my recommendation to Alien is going to be a redesign of the slide stop. In fact, I brought this up to them today, said, hey, I understand that I've been doing the manual of arms wrong. That being said, by gripping the gun wrong, you can also wear that out. I would recommend making this significantly smaller, especially because if you're putting any type of pressure on this, it can cause some problems with that wearing out prematurely. I think having the slide stop as large as it is completely unnecessary since it's not going to be used in the normal functioning of the weapon. So when it comes to complaints, that's kind of my main complaint when it comes to the ergonomics of the gun. Now, we talked about heat. I want to be very clear. This is not the first gun, or not even close to being the first gun to use a gas operation. One of the very famous ones is the HKP7, like we talked about earlier. Now, these guns are going to get hot. The slide and the top frame right here are steel. The bottom bit right here, which you can see, is aluminum to save on weight, but obviously it's still a heavy gun. So because of the gas operation, those hot gases are going throughout the entirety of the gun right here, it does get very toasty. After about 8 mags back to back, this gun will begin to cook your hand a little bit. So a glove does end up being somewhat necessary in certain shooting applications, especially if you're like in a shooting course, etc. So understand that when wearing that glove that you might be applying pressure there and adjust your grip accordingly. That is my biggest kind of complaint when it comes to the Alien. We beat on it enough. That's a dead horse. Let's go ahead and let's move on. Now let's talk about a couple modifications I made here. Obviously I added grip tape from Goon Tape because, you know, I just like the way it feels on my hand. Is that like a stimming thing? I don't know. Now up here, if you notice, I added some from Handle It grips. I cut up one of their grips and added some grip here and some grip here. This is to help me control the gun better. Right here is so that I remember my thumb placement, because on this one, I want to ride my thumb in a certain way that causes me to ride on that. So by placing my thumb on this grip tape right here, that ensures that I'm clearing that slide stop. That's why I did it, just so you guys are aware. Now, magazine release. This thing is awesome. Have no complaints whatsoever about the magazine release, or especially the grip. They recently changed the grip. It's more of a 1911-ish grip angle, and indeed, I find that the presentation with this gun is very easy. And like we showed in the video, the presentation is so natural for me that when I close my eyes and fire, the gun naturally returns to where it should be. This makes for incredibly fast, instinctive shooting with this particular weapon. Big fan there. Now, the other amazing thing about the Alien is going to be the trigger. Now, first things first, this is not a striker fired design. This is actually a hammer fired weapon, which explains why the trigger is so dang good. We'll show you that in just a moment, but for now, go ahead and put your finger right over mine. Let's feel it. So you can see, much like a Glock, we have a safety device right here. It's a simple mechanical lockout that prevents the trigger from being pulled unless you have a full trigger pull ready on it. So we're pressing into that trigger. We have a little bit of tension, barely any. First stage, that is about 3.2 pounds when I measured it. Feels good. It's been breaking in very nicely. It sat at about 3.4, dropped to about 3.3, 3.2, and it's held there for the last 4,000 rounds. God, that is such a nice trigger. Okay, feel off the reset. Boom, little tactile click. My only complaint would be maybe a little bit more forceful on the reset. I'm kind of a Glock reset guy. That being said, I really can't complain about it. It is a very fast trigger. And in fact, this gun is far faster than me. Put this in the hands of a better shooter and they would absolutely just run circles with this thing. This is a very good trigger. Now, as far as the hammer is concerned, being a hammer-fired weapon, let's talk about a few things. First off, we have the indicator letting you know that the hammer is cocked. Right here at the back, you can feel it. Boom, you lets you know it's cocked. Pull the trigger, it's gone. Now, it's not a loaded chamber indicator. We do have a clear chamber right here. It's just letting you know that the hammer is cocked. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at that mechanism. So these guns are nice and tight, and that's by design. So you can see the hammer right here. See, it's actually upside down, kind of like the Chris Vector. Very interesting design. And that's where it's locked. And then once it releases, it comes down, boom, nails the firing pin, gun goes off. Look how little that is. Like, that is some really good design. I wouldn't be surprised at all if you saw this design really take off in more production weapons and saw this more heavily used. It makes sense to me. By the way, hammering that last little bit into place, that's the way the gun's meant to be put into place. It will wear in over the next 10,000 rounds, be a little bit easier. But again, you're always gonna have that return to zero. So from there, let's go down. Obviously, when it comes to the grip module, this is all changeable. You can change the panels, rear grip, front grip, all that kind of stuff. I like the way it felt right out of the factory. And then at the bottom here, I do have a magazine well. Now, one thing that I like to do with my guns is I like to not clean them and just shoot them for the first couple thousand rounds. So I didn't touch the magazine well at all. And at about 5,000 rounds, it began to loosen up. The screw backed out a little bit, excuse me, at 3,000 rounds. So I went ahead, applied some blue Loctite, retightened it, and it hasn't loosened up in 2K. So again, if you have anything that's screwed into place, make sure you give it a little Loctite, make sure it's in place. This is basic firearm maintenance and knowledge. Make sure that you're taking care of your gun. Let's kind of get down into our final thoughts here. From a shooter's perspective, how is this gun? This gun's incredible. Despite it having kind of more felt recoil than, say, something like a staccato, I find that overall, the muzzle flip compared to a staccato or even many other high-end weapons is a little bit lower to significantly lower. Now, you do pay. You pay in the form of maintenance. You have to take care of this gun, and your manual of arms is a little bit different. Overall, this gun definitely falls into the competition world and definitely not into the I would take this into combat world. I find the gun to be a little bit finicky as it begins to get dirty towards the end of that maintenance cycle. So as I'm approaching that 500 to 1,000 rounds, a failure can be expected at any point. So if you're one of those fast and crazy teams where you're only firing like a mag and then you're done, cool. But if you want to depend on your life, I'm not saying that you can't depend on your life with this weapon, merely that it just requires a lot of maintenance to get going. And when it comes to a sidearm, generally you want to have a weapon that just is going to function no matter what. It's why you see Glocks and M&Ps and CZ75s used so heavily. So I do say this with a heavy heart because overall this gun is very incredible and I love shooting it. And indeed, I will continue to shoot it. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see updates to this weapon as it becomes more mainstream. I think it should become more mainstream because I think this is a very compelling design. When we come down to it, is it worth the $6,000? Well, we're gonna say our old thing, which is it worth it? Well, are you worth it? That's gonna be for you to decide. I would say my gut instinct is that $6,000 is quite a bit. Now, these do run anywhere from 4.5 to 6. 6 is a little high. Getting these closer to the 4K mark, I think makes sense. But that's still a lot of gun. That's a lot of Glocks that could be bought for that price, or a Glock and a lot of ammo, or etc. So understand where you sit as a shooter. This isn't gonna make you a great shooter. Being a great shooter depends on you and actually training. If you don't train, well, you're still gonna suck with this guy right here. So if you're at the very edge of your training with your Glock, with your CZ Shadow, and you decide you want to take a step up in the competition world, I don't think there's anything wrong with getting this or any other high-end competition weapon. Just understand what you're gonna be dealing with and understand that it's a lot of money, but it could be worth it to you if you're at that level and if it fits in with your needs and wants. Overall, this definitely falls into the category of kind of more towards boutique, but it's still a very cool design, very cool to show off at the range, very cool to let new shooters shoot it because they'll find it incredibly, incredibly comfortable. So that brings us to the end of the Alien. I do love this gun. I will continue to shoot this gun and continue to put tons and tons of rounds on it because, quite frankly, I love it. And we do little competitions between me and the crew, and I will definitely bring this gun out to give myself an unfair advantage because, well, that's life right there. Guys, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate you guys so much. As always, please go and check out our Patreon, all the craziest clips of me that I don't want to see, but that you get to see. And then, of course, we also game on there quite a bit. A lot of Battlefield 6 right now. Isn't that right, Sawyer?
Dude, Battlefield 6 is going so hard.
All day. Support class for days. All right, guys, take care. Final thing for you guys is going to be a little bit of dad advice. Don't forget to eat your vegetables. Broccoli, Brussels sprouts. That stuff matters, man. And that will pay dividends in the end. Thank you so much for watching. Nothing else for you.